and welcome to Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars. I'm your host, Matthew Kaplowitz. It's a bit earlier than when I did it last time, but 2021 is starting to wrap up and the holiday season is now in full swing. For Trek Untold, that means it's time for our end of the year wrap-up. And if you're new here, that adds up to 2 episodes filled with some of my favorite moments with guests from the last 12 months. Looking back on it, I still really can't believe how this year went. I got to spend an hour with Jonathan Frakes, an hour with Mcfadden, and even longer with Walter Koenig. Plus so many other amazing performers who I admire, and behind-the-scenes crew who I never knew that much about before. And that's not really much of a humble brag, it's just the honest truth. 2021 has been a wild ride, and I want to keep that momentum going forward in the new year. And speaking of, I do have some big plans for 2022 that we're going to talk about next week, but for now, let's just say that things are already busy here on the bridge, and I will definitely need the extra time to work on more episodes. But I'm not going to waste any more time speaking about that for this week, so let me go ahead and run the usual spiel that I say on every episode, and then let's get right into it. Before we begin this week's episode, I want to remind you about the different ways that you can support Trek Untold. If you're in a position to help us financially, we have a Patreon page at patreon.com/trekuntold, where you can support us for as little as $2 a month. Joining on higher levels allows you to have early access to the latest episodes, knowing in advance who our guests will be before anybody else finds out, or even the chance to submit questions to some of those future guests, and maybe your question might be heard on that episode. Shout out to our sponsor, Triple Fiction Productions, who create 3D printed toys and prop replicas inspired by Star Trek. Their items come in all shapes and all sizes and are always amazing, but you're going to hear a little bit more about them later on in the show. But most importantly, I need you to leave a review and rating on iTunes or wherever you're listening to Trek Untold. 5-star ratings and positive reviews help this show pop up when new listeners search for Star Trek podcasts and make sure that they know they're listening to something that is worth their time. If you're watching this episode in video format on YouTube, please leave a thumbs up, share the video, and of course, comment there as well. Interacting on all these platforms is a guaranteed way to spread the word about Trek Untold. So if you've been a fan of this show, please do take action in whatever way you can and help make sure that Trek Untold can reach more listeners just like you who are going to love this type of content. And don't forget to follow us on our social media pages, which includes Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. All you need to do is type in @TrekUntold on any of those platforms, search for us that way, and you will find us just like that. You can also watch the video version of this episode on our YouTube channel, which you can subscribe to at youtube.com/nerdnewstoday. The video versions are released on Sundays, so the audio version will always come first, but if you prefer watching it, that's the way to do it. We also do a lot of other Trek-related content there, including toy and book reviews and plenty of other stuff, so you might want to take a look too, just so you can indulge and get yourself a new daily dose of Trek nerddom however way you like to get it. Kicking us off in this first best of 2021, let's start with who my first guest was for the year, in fact, and that was the incredibly talented Duncan Regehr. Duncan has played 2 characters in Star Trek history, the latter a recurring character on Deep Space Nine named Shakar, but his first role was from the infamous TNG episode Sub Rosa. There, he played the one and only sex candle ghost, Ronan. Duncan has some great memories about his time in that episode, and here's a small clip of that interview to whet your appetite for more of his ghost stories. As we mentioned, and as anyone who's seen the episode knows, you spend most of your time on screen with Mcfadden as Beverly Crusher.
Right.
So, he already said some nice things about her, but what else do you remember about acting with her? And especially in this case, in this episode, her character is acting very much out of character.
Right. Well, most of the stuff was fairly romantic, and it's the stuff of bodice rippers and that kind of thing. So it was lovely, and she kind of understood that. It's an interesting thing when you meet people who are very familiar with the theater as she is, and there's sort of an instant acceptance and camaraderie that exists, like a bonding. We're of the same creed or whatever. And so that was there for sure from the very, very get-go. Likewise with Patrick,
Was there any inspiration from other famous characters in movies or anything else that you pulled from to play the sex candle ghost? I'm just going to keep calling him sex candle ghost. I can't call him Ronan. I'm sorry.
I didn't know it was called that for the longest time, and then somebody else pointed it out to me. And but I think it's a great title.
Fairly accurate too.
Fairly accurate, and I think I love the notion that the episode is both kind of affectionately lauded and critically derided in a way as well. It gives it an air of notoriety, but I didn't base it on anything in particular. just sort of went with what the script is and had an understanding of it, sort of a Byron-esque type of character, which is more about poetry than an actual character. That was where I came from with it.
When you put it in that perspective, it does kind of make sense because he is a classical bad guy character, but he's
Right.
also very lyrical, and there is
Yes,
something kind of magnetic and charismatic about the character.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So when you guys are filming the scenes where your ghost essence is doing your thing to Beverly Crusher, do you remember any off-camera reaction to Gates having her various reactions, let's just say?
I do remember one instance where she was kind of writhing around on the bed, having all these feelings, and suddenly she got into this very peculiar position where her rear end was right into the camera lens. I think it was Jonathan Frakes who said, something to the effect of, no, you don't want Gates. No, maybe not that way. Maybe not that way. Roll the other way.
I have an affinity for stunts, and really, who doesn't? But when I say that, I mean I used to spend my weekly allowance at Blockbuster instead of on school lunches, where I bought movies, and a lot of the times, they were martial arts films from Jackie Chan, Sammo Hung, or whoever I found that did awesome fight scenes. Speaking with stunt coordinator Dennis Madalone earlier this year was a great experience for me since he really pulled back the curtain on how a lot of things got done during his time working as the coordinator on TNG, DS9, and Voyager. This was a really in-depth interview, and here's a clip from the episode where Dennis talks about some of the roughest stunts he had to do on a Trek show. So, for yourself personally, what was the most intense stunt you ever did on a Star Trek show?
I think one of the coolest ones was in the beginning, season 1, and it was Heart of Glory, where it was toward the end of the episode, and the Klingons shot 2 security guards, and then one Klingon went to the into the ship and got shot by Worf and fell through the engine room, through one floor down through another, and hit the bottom floor. And Rob Bowman was directing that one, and so I got to play the Starfleet guy at noon that got shot, and ate the ground. And then they put me into makeup. And then that night at 11 p.m., I doubled the Klingon getting shot and fell through the floor and through the 2 floors and bottomed out. And that gag, just to do those 2 stunts in the same day, Starfleet and be a Klingon, was impossible. And yet I was the coordinator and the performer. So when you really look at that, that's pretty iconic that I was able to play a normal human and then the same day. So that never happened again. But to do that particular stunt was really tricky. To be able to fall through breakaway glass, head and chest first, and go all the way down and not get hurt. Because it was on the border. I wouldn't ask my people to do it, but it was on the border of what I thought we could do. And so that was pretty cool. I just saw that episode and I recorded that particular moment because it was I remember I had a little pad down below, like 6 inches, but I remember all the breakaway glass. I landed so flat and ate it that the glass I was pulling out of my face. It was because I had to land on everything. and I remember pieces stuck into my side. I had like scratches and stuff, but that was part of the game. And I just remember going, wow, man, I almost tweaked my back because I really came down and never twisted and just ate it. And so I was pretty proud of that. And I think I was already on the show, but I think that helped, me with my amazing run that I had for 14 years over there. With all, one thing about Star Trek is the journey on the show, it was so much fun, but it was really after the show, to be able to know that you have many friends out there, and when you bump into them, like I just bumped into Nana last year at the Emmy Awards. No, it was at a screening of the Deep Space Nine, What We Leave Behind, that Averbach put together. I saw her there, and I probably haven't seen her for, 15 years. And so when you see somebody and you haven't seen them for 15 years, and you see how happy they are to see you, and they see how happy you are to see them, that was pretty cool. And I think that's it, is that we have so much excitement together. Suddenly you see them 10 or 15 years later, and they're as happy as if it was, you were brother and sister. And so, and that's how it was that day at that screening, seeing everybody, Ira Bear, and just seeing everyone for the first time in all those years, all the actors. So that's the thing that is cool, is that you really fall in love with the people you work with a deep friendship that is always there, and suddenly it rekindles when you see them years later, or maybe talk to them on the phone. So, and that's the journey, and that's you too. Everyone you get to see and meet, I mean, it's an amazing journey, and hopefully you keep that friendship going throughout your life.
There's one stunt I want to talk about, which is from Deep Space Nine. I think it's from If Wishes Were Horses, or I can't remember the exact name. But the episode is where you get set on fire. And for folks watching the video version of this podcast, you'll see a picture. And is that actually from the DS9 episode?
Yeah, you see it? That's me on fire on that episode.
Please tell us about that, because I don't get to talk to enough stunt people on this show here, and I never get to hear about what it's like to be set on fire. So, what can you tell us about doing a stunt like that?
That fire gag was amazing, because it's the first time we really did fire on the show, and so I brought in my great buddy Tim Chirella, who is amazing with fire, a great stunt coordinator, great friend. And so one thing, when you're dealing with fire, if you make a mistake, you're burnt for life. So you can't mess with fire. So I always have Tim, and we took our Starfleet uniform and we soaked it in fireproof solution. And he comes on with his magical gel to put, if I have skin showing, to put gel on that so my hands don't get burnt. I remember putting a fake Starfleet face on. And then I didn't do an air tank. Normally you do an air tank and just breathe and you have an air. I decided just to be in a hose, which is a hose running out of your suit. And then right before they light me, I'll get rid of the hose. They'll tuck in the headpiece and they light me. But I remember doing that gag. I remember I could barely see, and I had to hold my breath and run down the hallway and be on fire. And that was pretty cool. That was just doing a full burn on Star Trek. You normally don't get to do 100-foot high falls or car chases, right? And you don't really get to do fire gags. So it was pretty cool to pull off a full burn and do that. So that was a cool moment for me.
Raven Dauda is a total comic book nerd. And as we discovered on the show, that's in fact where her name originated from. And I also found out that she is absolutely the type of person I would be hanging out with all the time if we were friends. Raven plays Dr. Pollard on Star Trek Discovery, a tough role to jump into for a number of reasons, especially when you consider when her character joined the crew. Raven told me about the unique audition process for a new Trek show, what it was like doing her first scene ever with Doug Jones, which is pretty scary, and how she grew into the character to make it her own. So Raven, let's beam into our Star Trek discussion. And of course, you are Dr. Tracy Pollard on Star Trek Discovery. Yes. So, the one thing we've learned from doing this show with so many different guests who've been on Disco is that they don't usually know they're auditioning for Disco. So can you kind of tell us, what was your audition process like for the show?
Yeah, because they have code names and everything, so you don't necessarily know. But when I auditioned for them, I did know, because my agent was like, it's code name this, but it's really Star Trek. And very secretive. And there was something that was so exciting about that. Like, there was something that was so cool about, like, you get the sides, what they call the audition material, but it's like on a time-sensitive thing, link. And then once you get that, then it disappears. Like, this message will self-destruct, and you can't copy it in any way. It's all protected and encrypted and all that shit. So it's just like so amazing. Because you see how you're a part of something that is so much bigger than you. So I knew going in. I first auditioned because I auditioned a few times. I think the first time I auditioned was for a Klingon ambassador, like one of the, yeah, I think, I'm drawing a blank. Then the second time I think was not one of the bridge crew. I'm drawing a blank now, isn't that something? But the third time is when I auditioned was for Dr. Pollard. The cool thing was like everything was disguised. Like you don't know, you're reading a part, and there are other characters obviously in the scene, but I didn't know that it was like Saru or who. Like you don't know. It's all very, very cloak and dagger. And I found that quite liberating because then at the end of the day, I made it about who's in the scene, what is my role as doctor, and then I endowed them, the others in the scene, with backstory as to how important they are to me. So you just do your homework as an actor and you lift it up off the page. And so without the added pressure of knowing exactly, like if I had known, oh my goodness, this is, Burnham and this is Saru, if I'd known that those were the people, I think it would have choked me up a bit. I think it would have just gotten into my head and mind effed me, so I hats off to how they're doing it, because they're respecting obviously their own, intellectual property and all that. But also it kind of makes it easy for us to just go in and do our work. And like I said, I auditioned for them once or twice before, so they know who people are. And I have a feeling, I would like to think anyways, that when I first auditioned, they were like, she was pretty good. Let's think about her for later. Let's maybe come back. And I'm so honored that they did. Like, it's really cool. Yeah. And when I got it, I couldn't believe it. I think I had an out of body experience, and I floated around somewhere, and then it's like, you have the best news in the world and you can't tell anybody. Like, I was like, what do I do with this? Am I gonna like blow up? Yeah, that's.
So your first episode was a little bit late into season 1 because essentially you are replacing Colbrooks. He's off the network, whatever, or dead at that point. And so your first appearance chronologically in the show is Vaulting Ambition, and it's right after that happens. So basically your first scene, I'm assuming you filmed it chronologically, but your first scene is with a screaming Shazad Latif and Doug Jones as Saru and all that Kelpian makeup. That's got to be a heck of a way to get welcomed onto the show.
It was so intense. First of all, I was geeking out because like you look down on the floor and you see the insignia and you're just like, oh my God, I'm here in sick bay. Like I was just freaking out. I was freaking out. I'm not gonna lie. I was trying to be present in my body, but I was freaking out. And then so you practice a certain way at home, like I practice my lines and what is it that I'm doing and all that stuff. You break down the beats. Like as an actor, you're a little detective and you're combing through the scene and just you figure out what's the best way to support the script and move the story along. Anyways, when I got there though, with everything going on, the lights, because I can practice on my own and my lines and all that stuff. But then when you get there on set and you have these big lights and cameras are moving, big, fancy, expensive cameras are moving, capturing stuff. And then you have these incredible actors screaming on the table. It's loud. There's stuff going on. It was very discombobulating. I was like, holy shit. And Doug Jones is, everybody's wonderful. And Doug Jones holds a special place in my heart because he was like my guardian angel, especially those first few days, because I didn't know. And I just held on to him for dear life type of thing. And he was like, it's okay, because you didn't practice it like this in your room, did you? I was like, no, I did not know it would be like this. And it was overwhelming, but gosh, everybody's such a team player that, yeah, after the initial shock of it wore off, I was welcomed with open arms and just felt like part of the team. And yeah, just went at it. It was awesome. It was so awesome.
Now, in your first appearances in Disco, the personality of Dr. Pollard doesn't really get to shine through as much as it does in like season 3, especially like I'm thinking of the episode Sukal, which is where David Ajal walks in and he takes Grudge from Sonequa, and he's all into Grudge more than he's looking at Sonequa. And you're giving him such side eye, like that face right there. That's the face you're giving him, basically.
That's the face that I get. That's Pollard's face. Okay, it's almost. I want it to become her resting face, where she just gives side eye, and she's like, you should not be doing this. You like rest. go get some rest, okay?
Like, where did this voice come from? Was this something that was kind of written into the show? Did they tell you to act like this, or did you kind of discover your own Dr. Pollard along the way?
I discover along the way, and that's the joy of having characters that grow, like we see over the years. We're seeing, from season 1 to 2, how the bridge crew is coming together, how the characters are just evolving, like we see it. And so more and more their personality comes out. So yes, for me, that was just a natural, that just kind of came out because it seemed to really fit. Also, fun fact, side note, I had met David Ajala in Falling Water. So there was a show that was done here in Toronto some years before, not that long ago before. And we didn't have any scenes together in that show, but we knew of each other. And so there's already maybe a little bit of rapport built in, so that I felt that way. And seeing him here and with the cat, with grudge and everything, it just naturally was the natural reaction to give his character. So yeah, really cool.
It was a perfect reaction too. I love that scene. Just, oh my God, so much attitude, so much sass right there. Body language, nailed it.
Thank you.
Harvey Jason is one of those actors who can say he did it all, and I love interviewing folks like that. His resume is enormous, and he had the opportunity to do some great shows and work with some truly outstanding people. Harvey's time in Trek came on the very first season of TNG in the first real holodeck episode called The Big Goodbye. There, he played Felix Leach in an episode where he spent a lot of time with another great of the screen, Lawrence Tierney. Here is a little bit about what Harvey remembered from his time shooting on that episode and working with, as he calls him, Larry. And I'm pretty sure if somebody like me ever called him Larry, I'd probably get my teeth knocked out. Take it away, Harvey. Harvey, let's talk about your Star Trek The Next Generation appearances. It's your first time in the franchise. You were in the episode The Big Goodbye from the very first season. You played Felix Leach. This episode is basically Star Trek's love letter, if you will, to the Big Sleep, the Maltese Falcon, and film noir movies in general. Can you tell us how you got cast for that role?
I don't remember how I got cast. I think I just got a call. I just got a call saying, you've got an offer to do this. And basically it's sort of a Peter Lorre, Sydney Greenstreet kind of thing, So I said, yeah, I would like to do it. So I did it, and it was Pat's first season. I do remember that at that time I was quite friendly. Pat and I got quite friendly, and somebody had contacted me about. They said, you're English. Do you have people in England that you telephone? I said, yeah. He said, because I have a deal where I can get you very, very cheap phone calls to England. So I said, oh, that's very good. So I signed up with this guy. And I was talking to Pat. Pat said, I have very little money and so forth. I said, I got a great deal for you then. I said, this guy contacted me and I can get you a cheap deal for phone calls to London. He said, oh, yeah, sign me up. So I gave him the guy's number. And he came the next day. He said, this is great. He said, these are really cheap calls. This is wonderful. It turned out, I think I heard like a year or so later that the guy was arrested for fraud. It was an entirely illegal thing. I had no idea, I had no idea what it was, nor did Patrick Stewart for that matter. But he was thrilled, he was thrilled. So was I. So I went in to do this thing, and as I say, it was a takeoff. It was Sydney Greenstreet and Peter Lorre. And the guy, what's his name? You'll tell me the name of the guy I played with.
Lawrence Tierney?
Yeah, Larry Tierney. So Larry Tierney was may he rest in peace, was a very difficult guy.
I've heard that.
And he would invariably blow lines, and then he'd blame it on a technician. Or he'd say, well, wait a second. I got the fucking light. Turn the light away. I couldn't think of the line because of the light. And he always blamed somebody else, but he had a lot of trouble with lines. And you didn't want to cross him. He was a really tough guy. I mean, he would lose his temper. He was a great presence. I liked him a lot. And he was a terrific presence, on set and on screen. And when he was younger, he had done some wonderful work. He'd done a lot of really good work, but we had a very good time. I don't know if he had a good time. I had a great time on that show. I'm not sure what he did, whether he did. I don't think he did, but I had a wonderful time. they were nice, and everybody was amenable, and it was fun. It was a fun episode to do. And then, did you see the plate?
Yeah, you have the plate right there with you. Very nice.
And in fact, a funny thing, about a year or so ago, about a year and a half ago, Seth MacFarlane came into the shop to buy some books. And in our office area of the shop, there are various clippings and personal things. And the plate was there, and suddenly he comes in and he says, "Oh my God, you're Felix Leach." I said, "What?" He said, "You're Felix Leach." He's a huge Star Trek fan, which I didn't know.
So this character you played, Felix Leach, as you mentioned, he's very much like Joe Egypt from Maltese Falcon. But this really wasn't actually your first time doing a Peter Lorre type character. I mean, you did that as well in Bring Him Back Alive, right?
Yes, I do. Yes. Yeah, that kind of, you know what I'm saying. Yeah. We patterned it after him. Well, I loved Peter Lorre. He had a damn good career, and he was an insecure guy. But I loved watching Peter Lorre. He had a great screen presence, and he and Sidney Greenstreet always played off each other very, very well.
Yeah, and I think you and Lawrence also had that kind of same chemistry on camera too. Very much the Sidney Greenstreet and the Peter Lorre type. Not just the look too, but
he was, he's a very good actor. He was a very, very good actor, and had a decent career. I think we worked well together. I mean, I liked him, and I think I had a very good time. I don't know whether he did, but I enjoyed working with him. It was a nice show to do. It was a very nice show to do. I had very little to do with all the other people, really. I liked the guy, Dana.
Yeah, that's Brett Spiner.
Yeah, I liked him. I had very little to do with anybody else, really, I think. But I liked him.
And for someone who has at this point worked so much already doing so many different television shows, did you feel that this show, Star Trek Next Generation, had any legs to actually stand on? Did you think it was going to go far, or was it going to be maybe just a one and done, that's it?
First of all, I thought it deserved to be very successful. The people were very dedicated. The crew was very dedicated. I remember the crew was really enjoying it all. And when you've got a happy crew, that's 90% towards success. So everybody was very enthusiastic. I do remember that. And that doesn't often happen with the show, where shows where people just get tired and they just walk it through the paces. But people, I remember vividly, everybody was very excited and enthusiastic about Star Trek, about this.
Trek Untold will return momentarily.
Trek Untold is brought to you by Triple Fiction Productions. Triple Fiction Productions produces affordable and unique 3D printed Trek-inspired products from the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, and the movies. Ranging from prop replicas to use in a fan film or cosplay, to accessories or playsets for figures in all different sizes, Triple Fiction Productions has got you covered. Past pieces for toys have included large centerpieces like 10 Forward from the Enterprise D, shuttlecrafts complete with working lights, and the Voyager Bridge, with smaller pieces including Borg alcoves, the Genesis device, and the dreaded arch-enemy of Worf, barrels. All highly detailed products are 3D printed and hand-painted in the USA, with new items added all the time, while simultaneously improving their printing quality based on fan feedback. To learn more about their products, visit triple-fictionproductions.net or visit them on Facebook at facebook.com/triplefictionproductions. Want to get 10% off your next purchase? Use code UNTOLD10 at checkout to receive this discount. Not applicable during sales or clearance events. That's code UNTOLD10 to get 10% off action figure dioramas, accessories, and prop replicas. Triple Fiction Productions, taking Star Trek where no 3D printer has gone before.
Hi, I'm Armin Shimmerman.
And I'm Kitty Swink. 17 years ago, I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. I didn't know it at the time, but I had a 4% chance of surviving 5 years.
As her husband, I was very scared.
But he never let me see that. You are a rock.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pancreatic cancer is the third leading cause of cancer-related deaths in the United States, with a 5-year survival rate of just 10%.
We want it to be much higher.
Much higher. It's 6% better when I was diagnosed, but not high enough. More than 60,000 Americans are estimated to be diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 2021, and more than 48,000 will die from the disease. Because symptoms are often vague, it can be hard to detect.
Like the rest of the world, the Star Trek universe has been struck repeatedly by pancreatic cancer. Not only those of us that work on the show, but our fans around the world as well. It is why we came together with so many others to work with the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, the leading patient advocates committed to fighting the world's toughest cancer.
PanCan is working hard to create better outcomes for this devastating disease through its groundbreaking research in early detection and better treatment options.
PanCan drives progress by funding life-saving research, providing personalized patient services, and creating a community of supporters and volunteers who will stop at nothing to create a world in which all pancreatic cancer patients will thrive.
You can help support their important mission by donating at pancan.org today. We donated. Won't you do so too?
Please, make it so.
We now return to Trek Untold.
Dey Young had 3 excellent roles in Star Trek history. First as Hannah Bates in the TNG episode The Masterpiece Society, later as the enigmatic Orissa from the DS9 episode A Simple Investigation, and finally as another mysterious lady from the Enterprise episode 2 Days and 2 Nights. But it was her DS9 appearance that was her favorite among all the roles she did in the franchise, and Dey had a lot to say about working with Renee Auberjonois in this part that she is still very proud of to this day. So we go from Hannah Bates to Orissa in Deep Space Nine in the episode A Simple Investigation, which is quite a change in the characters you've been playing here, because Hannah is kind of a lot more bubbly in some ways. Serious episode, but Hannah's a little bit more bright and cheerful. Orissa is a very mysterious, enigmatic character. This is very reminiscent of like a film noir style movie in a lot of ways. What did you think about the character of Orissa?
You know, I think back on that experience and playing that role. It is one of my favorite in all my career. Just everything gelled. It was, first of all, working with Renee and the director, John, was amazing. He was a wonderful director, and he encouraged the chemistry that Odo and Orissa had. And I think that's what really gelled in this. And it was a love story. And I literally fell in love with Odo during this time. And, you know, it was, yes, I was supposed to be mysterious and all of that. But the bottom line of this whole episode is the love that they have for each other, the connection. And then finding out at the end that she's someone else that she didn't even know about, and that she has to, you know, she has to go back to her husband when she loves this Odo, you know, when she's fallen in love. It was, I loved the experience. I loved working. Again, it was an experience that touched my heart, and I will remember forever. And it was probably one of my best experiences, acting experiences.
And that director for that episode, by the way, was John Kretschmer.
John Kretschmer, thank you. Oh, and you know, I'm still in contact with him via email, and he was wonderful to work with, very specific in what he wanted. I had a challenge on that because they have to move fast on these episodes. And so I had a number of scenes in Odo's office. And so what they would do, and it was the first experience I'd ever had in my career where they would, out of order, you would do all my coverage coming at me in like 5 different scenes. So it wouldn't even complete the scene. And then we would do Odo's coverage, all, you know, scene 2, 9, 11, all from that angle. So we were out of, you know, it wasn't no sense of continuity. So you really had to be on your game and aware of how it was being, you know, where you were in the scene and all of that. So one scene earlier on that I would have done where I'm supposed to be, you know, maybe very mysterious and cold and aloof in the beginning of the scene, in the beginning of the episode, you know, we're doing from this angle. And then I have to go to a scene later on where I'm professing, you know, the more intimate scene and come to my room and things like, it's all of a sudden like, and it's the next scene. And then I have to go back and be on his, on the other side for him and going through it all again. Are you following me about how they would shoot a lot?
Yeah, that sounds like a
I don't know
nightmare.
if I'm making any sense, but it is, it was the first time I had ever done that. I've had to go on and do it since then. It's not a way I love to work, but I'm willing to work anyway because, there's the continuity of really creating a scene and being there and being in character and then having to change your character and then have to go back to your character to be there for the other actor. So it was a challenge.
And on top of that, I've heard that typically on Star Trek shows, you don't really get rehearsal time. You're kind of just thrust right into it, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't even know if we had rehearsals at all. But, that is the graciousness of the cast that was on every single one of the shows, especially the first two that I worked on, which was Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, was that they were old pros. They had been doing it for so long, and they were welcoming, and they brought you in, and they kind of took you under their wing, and you felt a part of it, and they brought you in and to do the best job because they knew one of the beautiful things about all of this franchise was the guest stars had the most amazing roles. They really had amazing, meaningful roles, and that has never been the same. I mean, not been my experience on other shows since then. That where they really give the great roles to the guest stars, in many ways.
And that's totally why I do this show, to make sure I get those stories told, because they're pretty great.
Yeah, they really are.
So, of course, we mentioned plenty about Renee already. He's one of my favorite actors in all of Star Trek, and Odo is, I think, my favorite character ever in Trek.
He gave me a parting gift. I mean, we had such a connection, and I mean, I literally fell in love with him. He was just an amazing human being, and it was a gift that was given to me. I mean, the gift of working with him was really such a generous actor and a human being.
Well, I've got to ask, because you were the first person, I believe, to actually kiss Odo on the lips. So how the heck did you find his lips is what I want to know.
They were wonderful lips. Let me tell you. No, that was a real, I think the beauty of it all was, I didn't have any, as you know, Arissa, until the very end, doesn't have any kind of, I didn't have any, what is it called?
Prosthetics?
Prosthetics, thank you. I had nothing. I had myself, and that was Arissa. And she, so he could easily find me, but, it's all in the eyes, and so it was really, Renee's eyes really came through his prosthetics, and so it just all was so natural. It was seamless. It just was such a natural thing. It was a beautiful love story, and everything flowed easy, with the exception of, as I said, how they would film it, but the bed scene, we had a bed scene. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, you were the first person to ever sleep with Odo on the show. What is that like?
I loved that. It was fantastic. I felt so honored to be able to get into his bed.
I heard, by the way, Renee had to actually shave his chest for that scene too. Is that true? Do you remember that?
Yes, I think so. I think he had to. I think it was like, I think I lay in his arms. I mean, oh God, it was one of those fantastic experiences. And it was the chemistry that we had, I think. It was a beautiful, loving chemistry. And I especially liked her because she goes through such growth and change. And she has a real arc in the episode. And it's very heartfelt throughout the whole thing. She might start out very mysterious and all of that, and she's on a mission, but by the end you really know who she is.
So I don't know if you're aware, Dey, but there's actually now Basically, you're part of a Star Trek meme. So someone found a few weeks ago a trading card from the Deep Space Nine trading card series, and it's a card of you and Odo in bed together.
No!
And it's
Well,
shirtless Odo, it's you in bed.
I've got a Pretty Woman meme, but I didn't know about that. Can you send it to me?
I will send it to you. You're now a Star Trek
Give you
meme.
my phone number. Oh my God, that is fantastic. I love it. And it's us in bed?
It is you guys in bed together. You two are cuddling. Renee is on top of you. It is too hot for TV.
Oh no, you're kidding. I love it. Oh my gosh, that is fantastic. Thank you, Matthew, for letting me know. My gosh.
Do you remember if Arissa was ever talked about to return to the series?
Well, no, because unfortunately she has a husband, and she really had a whole different persona on who she was, and she had been, I think, hijacked and had something put inside of her in her brain, where she was sent out to be a spy, and but it wasn't who she was. So she goes back to, and I'm just going to absolutely embarrass myself on this show, but what is it that I become again at the end? One of those.
I don't remember the exact alien. We'll just say you went back to your home planet. Make it easy.
Yes, thank you. And one of their aliens, and it was a very popular one. It was beautiful, and it had the little forehead here, and oh gosh, I felt more beautiful as that alien than as Arissa, but and the wardrobe was beautiful. Oh, anyway, that is one of my favorite scenes, is going and saying goodbye to him at the very end. I mean, it makes me cry even today. It was such a heartfelt goodbye, because I think it was like one of the last episodes with Renee too.
It's a very, very good episode.
Obviously, you can tell it made such an impact for me.
Yeah, I can definitely tell. John Putch has a long history in television and film, and these days spends his time in the director's seat. So he truly has a very unique perspective on the entire industry. His most famous Trek roles would be Mordok and Mendon from Star Trek TNG, where he was the first and second Benzite ever in Star Trek history. That's a big story that I recommend you check out the full episode to hear, but really the story I enjoyed the most was from his time on Star Trek Generations. There he played a reporter on the Enterprise B alongside one of his friends in the industry, where he had some less than stellar memories of William Shatner. And, well, there's one thing we like to talk about on the show, it's less than stellar memories of William Shatner. So take it away, Putch. So you have one last appearance in the Star Trek franchise, and that is in Star Trek Generations. You're a reporter. In fact, you're the one who stands behind Captain Kirk for a lot of it. You're also following around Scotty here and there. I just watched it, in fact, and I was like screenshotting all the times you appear on screen. So yeah, tell us about Star Trek Generations, because that's pretty crazy too. It go from basically the TV show to the movie, and just how many more extras they shoved into that scene in particular. It's just like so much going on in that one scene.
Well, I had a couple scenes. It had one in the later, and I don't know if it was cut out. I think some of it was cut out, but Junie Lowry Johnson, who cast the TV show, wanted to bring all of the guest actors back and put them in the small parts in the movie, because clearly they're aware of the fan base and the history, and they like, they're good. They're good about that, and they want to bring this, these people back. She begged me to do the little part of the guy with the camera on his head, the reporter. And my buddy Tommy Hinckley, who played the guy with the sound, the microphone, we were there together a lot. He was on some Next Generation show as well. So me and Tommy, and we knew each other for years. We were basketball buddies. We were on the bridge for that opening sequence, when Shatner was there, and Scotty and Walter, and Chekhov and Scotty and Shatner, and Alan Ruck. What was great for me was I didn't have to be talked into it. I just I wanted to be in it and see what was going on. I wanted to get in the building, basically. It was pretty amazing. It was like 3 or 4 days on the bridge. It might have turned into 5. And aside from all the, they must have had, I don't know, 35 extras that were just extras. And then there was me and Tommy, because we had dialogue. And then there were a few other people that had dialogue. And, they just, we were pushed into the crowd. And then you had, Shatner, who walks in, with basically a force field of ego. But what was amazing about it was, I think it was the first movie since the original movies, the features that came out. I think it was the first series where, he appeared. He's going to appear in another one as a guest. So he walks onto the stage, and all the extras start applauding him. Okay, so he's already got his audience basically, and everybody stopped and he like said hello and everything, and then he said, "Well, it's good to be on the Enterprise again." And of course it looked completely different. And so we start working with him, and he had just written his book, his memoir, the Star Trek memoir, and he's not well liked by his cast members, according to the book, and James Doohan did not like him that day or that week, and neither did Walter. And I knew this because I had read the book, and I could tell they're not talking to him, they're not hugging him, they're not shaking his hand, they're literally just like this. And I'm going, wow, it's like 30 years, okay, since they originally did the original show. And like I'm looking at them, and there they are. There's those three titans, and these two clearly hate that guy, and he has no idea, or he's just being himself, which is just so fun to watch. Oblivious, pompous guy, and he'd done a bunch of television at that point. There's so many good stories about him. So every day I would just try to memorize and record everything he did, and I would run home and tell my wife about it and call my sister, and anybody would listen. I go, "You're not gonna believe what happened today." So the one day, like if you see this behind me, there's the turbo lift right there. Well, there was one of those on the set, and the scene called for the three of them to walk onto the bridge for the first time, before takeoff. And Alan Ruck says, "Welcome aboard," and la la la, and he goes and sits down. So those doors get opened and shut by a person, and so the doors open, they go, "Okay, rolling," and they get, and they have to go in there, the three of them, and I'm elbowing Tommy. I go, "Those guys hate him, and they're gonna have to go in that little booth and close the door until action is called." And there was a bunch of dialogue before the doors open. So there's Alan Ruck's doing his bit, and they're covering that, and then I'm not 10 seconds into the scene, the door opens and the three of them walk in, and then they do, they go do their scene, their greeting and all that stuff. And right before, the take started, Tommy and I were constantly looking into this door that, they were in, and Walter was like this against the wall. And Jimmy Doohan was like this. And Shatner was, he was, "Well, this is kind of fun." And, it's kind of different to be here again. They're not even answering. The doors close, and then action is called, and they're in there for, they're baking together. I just wanted to be inside. That's all. I wanted to know what was going on in there. So that stuff happened all week. And then I had to do stuff with him. I had literally had a scene with him. I talked to his character, but he treated me like an extra. So he thought I was, and of course he has no idea that I'd been on a million television shows at that time. I was a working actor. He doesn't know any of this stuff. But he treated me like an extra, which is really, I was, mildly annoyed, but I was also I just was thinking, I can't wait to tell everybody this. This is the best thing ever. William Shatner, Captain Kirk, he thinks I'm a bit extra guy. There's a scene where he has to cast me aside, "Don't get that out of my face," because I'm constantly doing this, to bug him with the camera, because I'm the camera shooting guy. And Tommy's down there sticking the mic in his face. And we do a rehearsal, and he literally throws me into a light stand. He literally just, the guys goes, "Get that out of there." I'm not kidding. We were up on a platform, and I stumbled back, and I almost knock over, a baby par light or something, or and and I literally I went up to him after. I go, "Hey, Bill." I called him Bill because I refused to say Mr. Shatner. I said, "Listen, just put your hand on me. Let me do the work, okay? Because I almost knocked the lamp over just now." He would not look at me. He'd look to the director and go, how can we make this work? I'm literally, and I'm literally going, I just told you how we can make it work. Let me do all the work. Just give me the motion of the hand. Isn't that what we do? Anyway, it was infuriating. So the rest of the week, he was like, he would not talk to me. He would not acknowledge me. It was the best thing ever. And then at the end, when he finished, he's, everyone stops and applauds. Ladies and gentlemen, that's William Shatner's last scene in the show. We want to thank him. And, and everybody's down in the little circle, that the one like I'm sitting in now. And, and he's up on the, the rail there. And he's, thank you. And, there's all this thing. And like everybody's out there applauding, a sea of people applauding. This is me. That's what I was doing. It was just eyeballing the guy. It was fantastic. He didn't even see me probably. But there was just stuff like that happened every day. And then one there was a scene in the movie where he stands at the directors. He stands at the captain's chair with Alan Ruck. And he they have an exchange, and Alan Ruck asks him to go take his seat. And he doesn't, and he doesn't sit in the captain's chair on the Enterprise. He has to go sit along the rail, with the rest of them. And so they did that scene and everything. And like the next day, we're setting up to do a whole different scene. There's a crane hanging out in the middle of the set. There's like all this shit is doing, and I was sitting down in this little pit area with Tommy, and I listened to Shatner say to David Carson, I think we missed something yesterday. And like I'm elbowing Tommy. I'm going, what's he gonna say? What's he gonna do? And he said, I think we need to do the scene at the captain's chair again. I think I missed something. And David, who's British guy, goes, oh, really? Well, what should we miss? He goes, well, I really think I should have taken a moment with the captain's chair before I release it and go. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, he's going to make us reshoot. We're going to be here forever. I'm going to get more overtime. This is fantastic. So, and David Carson said, yes, all right, I think we can work that in today. So during the day, at some point, we set up to do that shot again. And I don't think you can see my chair in this shot. Yeah. Okay. So I gotta get down here. Okay, see the chair. So they do the scene like this. I'm bent down because I'll disappear if I stand up. Okay. So he does the scene again, and right before he leaves, this is all he did. He wanted to reshoot because he wanted to fondle the chair. So you'll see him touch the chair like this, like that, and look forlornly at it, and then he goes off and takes a seat. And that must have taken 3 hours to do.
I can literally tell you, I was just rewatching the movie and watching that part, and I was like, it's like he really did go out of his way to touch the chair. So I'm glad there actually is a story behind it, because it seems like he really wanted to do something with that chair.
That's amazing that you picked up on that, because I never told you that story till now.
No, I've never heard it before. I just noticed like the way he did it. It seemed extra. It seemed so unnecessary. There would have been such a more subtle way to do it, but it's Shatner, so no.
Pretty hammy. It's pretty hammy. And then there was like an explosion thing, and we all had to do the Shatner, as they say, where we all had to pretend to like shift, and the camera dutched, and he was right over my shoulder on one of these, where the railing is, on the set. He was, and he did his usual, and like, da-da, and he'd like grab onto the railing. Well, the railing broke free, and William Shatner flew over me and Tommy's head and fell right down in front of us. And like everybody goes, oh, and he rolls, he goes, I'm all right. And he got up, and everybody was like, oh my God, what happened? And he broke the set doing his own bit with the thing. So, oh my God, that was like that was 2 hours right there. 2 hours. He went to the medic, nothing's wrong. Everyone's around him. And then meanwhile, the grips are with screw guns, chains, hacksaws, they were like attaching that rail like within an inch of its life. There's nothing was going to move it but a wrecking ball at that point. 2 hours. That was a good one. But I'd tell you, and every day something like that would happen. And I would go home and I go to my wife, "You're not going to believe what happened today." And I'd call anybody who was a Star Trek fan. I'd call them, tell them those stories, and it so fun, so fun.
Noah Averbach-Katz rapidly became a fan favorite on the 3rd season of Star Trek Discovery, where he played the Andorian named Rin. A lifelong Trekkie who had some actual tales of going to conventions as a kid told us that being a part of Star Trek was like a dream come true for him. And in this clip from that episode, we learned about the process to become this character and some behind-the-scenes stories from the earliest appearance of Rin in the series. So when did you discover that Rin would be a recurring role? And more importantly, when did you find out the ultimate fate of Rin?
Yeah, I made a decision pretty early on to not really get too involved in what was coming or what was happening, because one way or another, whether it's one episode or 50 episodes, he comes to an end at some point. And I knew that if I had in my head, this is going to come to an end at this point, I would be so distracted and disappointed that I wouldn't actually be able to do the job that I wanted to do and focus on the acting and it being exciting and having fun. In that first episode, I read it, and he's running, and then he gets beamed up, and then in the end he's on sick bay. So I'm like, well, I'm definitely coming back for one more. I'm definitely coming back for one more. And then in the next episode, or maybe it was actually in that same one, or whatever, in the call sheet, you basically have like a list. A call sheet is like, basically everyone who cast, crew, who's involved, but the whole cast is essentially listed and given a number. So that way, when you're doing, scene 6, you have number 3, number 4, and number 1. And a lot of the time, not that there's like a perfect system, but generally, the most important people are given the highest numbers. And as you go down, there are less of important people given the higher numbers. And I think I knew I was going to die when I was number 45, 46, which is fine. But I realized I was going to die when Grudge was number 22. And I was like, oh no, if this cat is higher than me, if this bastard cat is a higher number than me, then there's no way I'm sticking around longer than a couple of episodes. So I knew it was coming, which gave me some peace. I really, really got to soak in every moment that I was there. I wasn't sort of on my toes, tense about waiting for, the bad news. So when it finally did come, it was like, oh yeah, well, I knew this was coming. And you know Star Trek well enough where you're like, who's going to make it or not, one way or another, whether or not they're dead or they go off in another ship, to another quadrant, when somebody's going to make it. And I was like, this guy, he's not going to make it. But he had a great time while he was doing it.
And to be fair, Grudge is a queen, so it's not surprising she would get top billing.
Yeah, I understood. I wasn't too angry at it, but it was very clear to me, where the priorities lay. So there you go.
One of the things that I picked up about his character kind of reminded me of Armin Shimmerman's portrayal of Quark, and that's how he always has these very sympathetic eyes, and I always felt like Rin had the same kind of sympathetic eyes. So I'm kind of wondering, at what point did you become conscious of how the makeup was on you, and how did that help you ultimately develop the personality of Rin?
That's such a good question. And anytime I can be compared to Armin, I'll take that as a massive compliment. So thank you. That's totally spot on. Really early on when I was working with David in the first episode, it was like, well, what, I don't know what to do in this thing. I don't know how to get this to work. And just like in the first few scenes of watching David, he's such a talented performer and actor, and it was very strange. I'd be on set with him and he'd do something, I'd be like, what? And then I go over to the playback and watch the scene back, and it was like exploding off the screen, and I was like, how the hell did you do that? Like, what is this? What's going on here? I need to figure out how to do that, because like it is totally happening in this amazing way. David has these really large eyes, and it's not that they're, of course they're expressive, but he really is focused on communicating a huge amount of story just with those subtle eye movements where he's looking, what he's, just being there, and you can just really see into his eyes. And I thought, well, why don't I try that? I don't really have much else to work with here. So like, what if I just try doing that? And going back and watching playback, it just was immediately starting to click for me. What's challenging is that it's great to, use body language and use big facial movements, but that's can be really useful as like a Klingon who has these big moments. But when you're playing somebody with a real challenge, you're playing somebody who is beaten down, who has to remain quiet, who feels small and contained, and like they have been, put into this very small box. It's a real challenge because you can't, have a big, big thing, arm movement, whatever, to kind of convey that story. So I really tried to focus on, just trying to convey the sort of emotional story through the eyes, not try and worry about manipulating the mask too much, and just let the mask sort of tell the story of his struggle or his, what he's been through, this sort of battle wearied person that he is. And so I just tried to really focus on telling that story through the eyes. It was, it's just a really interesting acting exercise, to have things taken away from you, and really be forced to simplify. It's just a really, really interesting exercise to get to do. I really, really enjoyed it. And yeah, it's funny because even the eyes have these really thick contacts in them as well. So it's, there is something even still where it's like really, where do I look? When do I look? Because even the eye movements around the side of the eyes where the dilation of the pupils isn't there. So it just really, even with those contacts, they're so blue and so vibrant that you just project a story onto them. And so, the sort of hope was, let me do a little bit of work and see if the audience can kind of meet me halfway and fill in the rest of the story.
Earlier in this best of episode, we heard from Dey Young, who was one of the guest stars in the TNG episode The Masterpiece Society. Well, this year I spoke to another actor who also did that episode, the prolific Mr. Ron Canada. Ron was Martin Benbeck in that episode, but he also has 2 other Trek appearances to his name, aside from another enormous resume that has to be seen to be believed. Ron also played the Malon named Fesic in the Voyager episode Juggernaut, but my favorite role of Ron's was as a Klingon lawyer named Ch'pak from the Deep Space Nine episode Rules of Engagement. This episode was very interesting for a number of reasons, and I'm going to let Ron go ahead and tell you why this one really stands out to him among not just his time in Trek, but in television history as a whole. I thought in particular this episode, your scenes with Avery, you're talking about listening and reacting and responding. Avery seemed like an amazing scene partner for you to work with. And something I've noticed with him when we talked to other guests who got to do scenes with him is he very much feeds off having an adversarial counterpart, which Ch'pak very much provides.
He liked that very much. I think it got him engaged. At that point in the series. I think, what I was able to bring something to that episode that engaged Avery and engaged Michael in a particular way, or at least there were some people around the production I remember who commented in that regard. And I like to think, as I said, my job as a character actor is to create texture around the money, the stars, but I also want to bring stimulation to them, and I want to challenge them. Because usually more often than not, sometimes you're an ally of the star, but more often, or the series regular, I get brought in to pose a problem, an obstacle. And you can't have a strong character in a drama if they're not overcoming a dimensional obstacle. And Chapek is the personification of obstacle for Captain Sisko and for Worf. And so the more dimensional I could make that, or in any role, in any of the shows I appear in, or films I appear in, the more that actor gets to bloom. Acting together it's a group activity. It's not a solo activity. I mean, I know there are people who don't like one-man shows. I've never wanted to do one. Have no interest. It's like playing with another good musician. They stimulate you, and I'd like to think at this point that I'm a good enough musician so that I stimulate my scene partners, and we get a good back and forth going. A good, that I hit the ball over the net hard enough so that, so to speak, or with enough spin so that they have to engage their skills to get it back across the net, if I can use that as a sports metaphor.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine you probably don't spend your days watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine like I do, but I can tell you I can tell you from watching, other episodes of guests who I've spoken to, Caitlin Hopkins comes to mind because she did an episode where she was, again, similar kind of adversarial character to Avery. I felt like he really brought his A game to this episode, and you guys played off each other so well. Like, I feel like, and that's kind of a topic I want to talk about too. This episode is, we mentioned earlier, this is LeVar Burton directed this one, and the stars of this episode. This is a Michael Dorn-centric episode with Avery Brooks as his support and Ron Canada as the advocate going against him. This is basically, I'm trying to find the best way to say it, but this is basically like a Black run episode with Black characters as the stars. And I feel like that really kind of brought together something different that we don't normally see on Deep Space Nine.
Yes, or see on any other television show. Really. In my career, it's not something, it's funny for us three African-American male actors, mature male actors, to be on screen together was a rare occurrence. I can remember doing an episode of Seventh Heaven with Keith.
Keith David.
Keith David, yes, Keith David and Mr. Collins, and we're the three of us together. And Keith and I laughing, saying to Stephen, man, you're participating in something rare. The two of us on screen together at the same time. This is a rare thing. And it is, in fact, the one and only time you will ever see Ron Canada and Keith David, who are contemporaneous, who are friendly colleagues, and whose careers are contemporaneous almost completely. That's the only time you'll ever see us on screen together. So for me and Avery and Michael to be there, I called it also the duel of the episode of the dueling bassos, because you have three kind of big voices of three guys who are kind of known for their voices going at each other. Although I was a little handicapped by the teeth. Yeah, it was special for that regard. And again, it was under the guidance of LeVar, who is a man of such intelligence and dignity and a director of such skill and preparation and confidence, and enjoyed so much confidence from the crew, something you could feel that they loved going to war with this guy. And he had the respect of Avery and Michael. My impression of DS9 was that the camaraderie was not the same as what I talked about on SNG, but there was certainly respect all around. And LeVar is just a leader. He's as good, maybe the best director of television that it's ever been my pleasure to work with. I think I know, given my film career, a little bit about directors, especially in terms of their interactions with actors. And, I have worked with Rob Reiner and William Friedkin and a couple other people like that. In my mind, LeVar is as good as anybody. He has my gratitude for that performance as well, for helping me and guiding me and supporting me thoroughly.
Can you describe a little bit about what his directing style is like?
Confidence and relaxation. The two things that make good acting, he displays as a director. And you learn from, I direct some stage myself, and you like to think you learn from every good director that you ever have. And LeVar just exudes confidence on the set. And it is contagious. He also, his preparation is complete and total. He's not a director who's always looking at his script. He's not looking at anything except watching you. He's not glued to Video Village. There's never any sense of tension or panic. He has this residing calm, which in that respect, he's like John Sayles, the great film director. He is just serene. He gives off an aura, or at least in that week of working with him, of there's nowhere else he'd want to be except right where he is. And how we're going to get this done, because we're us, and how could we fail, And people, he just creates an atmosphere where everyone is respected, and where you can tell the crew knows that they are respected and regarded, and they want to please him. And there's an efficiency because he is prepared, which is the thing that actors, and I think crew people, will tell you they most want from a director, that he or she be prepared, and to know that text in and out, up and down. And he also has the advantage of being a fine actor. And I'm sorry, in my experience, the best directors have always been people who have acted themselves. They have the most useful information to convey, and know how to convey it, and they know what not to say and how not to get in your way. I can say that about Kevin Hooks. I can say it again about Rob Reiner, as directors or actors who stand out in my mind, and who I've admired in my career. But LeVar, top of the list for me. And I looked at that performance today, and I thanked him again. And I thought about what a superlative director he was.
And finally, for this week's Best of 2021, let's revisit my interview with Jonathan Frakes. And I gotta remind you guys, this was easily the most nervous I had ever been for an episode of Trek Untold. But Frakes couldn't have been kinder, and we had a great time chatting about the way that he directs, how he learned to direct, and of course, plenty of really great Star Trek stories. One of the episodes I really felt compelled to ask him about was the TNG episode The Outcast, which guest starred Melinda Kulea, someone hopefully will get on the show one day too. The Outcast is an episode that still has a lot of social relevance today. And discussing that one with Frakes, it kind of turned into a larger story that ultimately led us down a path about talking about the relationship that Riker had with Deanna Troi. Let's take a listen. So I just wanted to pick your brain a little bit about another episode, which you didn't direct this one. This is one that you were very important in, though. That's The Outcast. I just rewatched this one again. Another beautiful episode I completely kind of forgot about. And it's an interesting one, too, because it's kind of like we're looking at early 90s progressivism here for LGBT topics. And I was surprised how well it aged. I mean, again, this is coming from a straight white cis dude here, but for the most part, I'd say it ages pretty well. Some things maybe not as much, but overall, it's for what it is, it holds up in today's modern lens. I'd love to hear a little bit about working on that episode, because that's such an interesting and topical one, too.
It was a wonderfully topical episode, and it was right in Roddenberry's wheelhouse of how he likes to tell stories allegorically and using the time of the future as to relate on or to comment on what's going on in the present. And the opportunity was there to cast a man in as the part of the outcast instead of an androgynous woman, so that it just seemed to me that if they're going to tell the story, which I think was a great LGBT story, would you not have cast, certainly if you did it now, you'd cast a man in that part, right?
That's one of the criticisms I see today, looking at it through the modern perspective, is that everybody's saying it would have been so much more amazing to show the androgyny with male actors, because for the most part, that alien race, the Janai, it was predominantly females playing those characters.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Where was that? The early 90s?
Yeah, definitely early. I think it was season 5 that was from. So yeah, it's pretty hot topic considering the time it was coming from too.
Yeah, and now we have on Discovery, we have Anthony Rapp and Wilson Cruz, who are both gay icons, are married to each other on the show, and they're fantastic representatives. And we have Blue and Ian, who identify they are playing characters who are what they are, and it's and this is a credit to Michelle Paradise and to Alex Kurtzman, who have made an effort to do it the right way, if you will.
Yeah, the times have definitely changed, and things have definitely gotten better, so it's great to see that representation.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of curious now about the character of Riker here. Understanding today what we know more about sexuality, what do you think Riker's affiliation would have been? Especially looking at this episode that we're talking about right now. Do you believe that Riker was straight? Was he bi? Would he have been omnisexual? What would you have labeled him?
Riker always felt straight to me. I mean, he had a healthy respect for alien women that I don't know how you would describe that. Certainly he knew how to serve on the Klingon ship, but his heart was always with Troy. One of the things that Marina and I take great pride in is that, if you recall in the pilot, part of the story they tell is that Riker and Marina, or Riker and Troy, had served together, were in love, and shared empathic thoughts. That Riker somehow, not only her betazoid qualities were maintained through the show, but there was a scene, I believe, where Riker knew what she thought or felt what she felt, and you could tell that even though they had made a decision that we're serving together, so our relationship will be not at the forefront. And then eventually, because the writers wanted, I'm assuming this as well, the writers wanted to free Troy up to have affairs with alien guest stars, if you will, and Riker the same way. Riker went sort of without the same degree that Kirk did, but had the sort of alien lover in every port kind of vibe, or a couple times a season. But Marina and I consciously, and talked about it on a regular basis, insisted that we still loved each other. Our characters still loved each other. And that would inform, how actors often, as part of their technique, have a secret as part of what they use for their character. Well, this wasn't a secret. This was part of what my acting teacher used to call our packing. That was packed in both Marina and Jonathan's approach to Troy and Riker, so that in a scene, our characters would look at each other occasionally, and it would relate to our relationship, and not necessarily to the scene, or how our relationship was affected by the scene, or how our relationship could influence the scene. And I think, and I could be completely egomaniacal about this, but I believe that worked and kept our relationship alive, subconsciously perhaps, in the writers' minds. And then you flash forward to Nemesis, where they thought, oh, wouldn't it be a great idea if these two characters got married?
So that's all the snippets we're going to play for you guys for this week, but make sure you come back next week to hear part 2 of the Best of Trek Untold from 2021. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Trek Untold, which is just one word in all those platforms. If you're listening to this on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or any of those other locations, please leave a positive review and a 5-star rating if you can to help show other listeners how much you like this podcast and spread the word. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel at youtube.com/nerdnewstoday. If you're enjoying Trek Untold and in a position to financially support the show, I hope you consider being one of our Patreon supporters by visiting patreon.com/trekuntold, where you can help us out for as low as $2 a month and get some pretty sweet perks. Shout out once again to Triple Fiction Productions, who you can check out at triple-fictionproductions.net. If you're a collector of Star Trek toys in any size or scale, or enjoy prop replicas, you're going to love the quality of their 3D printed products, and I'm sure you will be a repeat customer. If you have any comments, feedback, or suggestions for future guests, send an email to me at trekuntold@gmail.com. I hope you'll beam up again with us next week for another episode of Trek Untold. So until then, I'm Matthew. Thanks for listening, and remember, fortune favors the bold.
Trek Untold is sponsored by TrekSphere.com, promoting fan-produced Star Trek content in all forms, is powered by the RageWorks podcasting network, and is affiliated with Nerd News Today.